Dads, what do you want your kids, grandkids, maybe even your great grandkids to remember you for? How would you want your wife to describe you? We are often characterized by the ones closest to us. Does this shake you up a little bit and make you think? It should. While it is impossible for any dad to live and leave a good legacy on his own power, there is a sure way to leave a lasting positive legacy you've always wanted to leave for generations. My guest is going to give us an actionable steps that you can start now and begin leaving the legacy today, so don't go away.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
My guest is best-selling author, speaker, and founder of Better Dads, Rick Johnson. Rick's passion and purpose is addressing the urgent need to empower men to serve their families first and their communities. Rick, thank you so much for being on the Fatherhood Challenge.
My pleasure, Jonathan. Nice talking to you.
Rick, let's start off with the story of how you started Better Dads and why you started it.
22 years ago, I had two small kids and a wife, obviously, and I had not had a good role model for a father figure growing up. I came from an alcoholic home with, an abusive environment and all that. So I didn't really know. I mean, I was smart enough to know I didn't know what I was doing, first of all, because I hadn't had a good role model. So because I was a pretty entrepreneurial guy, I just decided I'm going to start something that's going to help give men some tips for their tool belt, so to speak, so that they can be the kind of dads that they want to be and the kind of dads their kids deserve. And so I did a bunch of training, a bunch of studying, read a ton of books, just basically made myself into a knowledgeable person about what fatherhood entails and what healthy fatherhood looks like and things like that. And 22 years ago, there wasn't, especially on the West Coast, there was not any fathering books or programs that were going on to teach you how to be a better dad. And so I started working with men, speaking to small groups of men and giving them some tools for their tool belt, so to speak. And it kind of exploded from there, and there was, just a huge need for that, and had a bunch of other stuff come up that, eventually I ended up writing books on most of the different activities that we were doing, and gave a pretty wide, after 20 years, we were doing a lot of things to help a lot of different people. And so I'm pretty proud of the work that we did and the impact that we had. I'm pretty much retired now, but it was a good 22-year run or whatever. So I feel good about what we did. So
Was it really a challenge to try to get everything going and get this off the ground, just given it with how you grew up? I mean, what were the obstacles, what were the barriers from your past that made things a challenge, and how did you overcome those barriers?
Yeah, there were a lot of barriers. There were still barriers as far as that goes, but I think when you're raised in that environment, you're raised in a survival type of situation. You're not in a nurturing learning. Let's use this to bounce off into life and have a good soft landing and be able to live life. You're still dealing with a lot of different things. And of course, I went to a lot of individual counseling. We went to a lot of couples counseling because my wife had came from a similar background. And, I was like, I can remember telling her once, I don't think any of this is going to work. And just, one day it just seemed like everything kind of clicked into place a little bit, and found myself being a little bit better father, not reacting so much to when I got angry or frustrated, but, being able to sit back and process it a little bit before I get impatient or angry with somebody. And, it's still a work in progress, but, we do the best we can and make the best of it. I think when I first started this ministry, if you will, I made a covenant with God that it was His ministry and not mine, and I would just be available for whatever He placed in front of me. And I found out pretty quickly that's a pretty dangerous deal to make with God, because He'll start putting all kinds of strange things in your plate that you never anticipated or counted on. And so, I spent a lot of time trying to catch up and figure out what God was trying to get me to do. But yeah, I think I learned pretty quickly that I couldn't do it all by myself. My wife was a huge support. Obviously, I don't think a man can do full time ministry if his wife isn't totally in his corner and cheering him on, so to speak, helping him. She was a huge help on, behind the scenes, on helping put together workshops or conferences, or working the table booth for me at conferences and things like that. So, um, yeah, I think I learned pretty quickly, as much as I hated to admit it, that I wasn't capable of doing everything that I needed to do. So,
I was laughing about your covenant because I can actually relate to it completely. I had no desire to start the Fatherhood Challenge. It wasn't anything that was remotely on my mind or my heart to do. It was a comment from my wife
mm-hmm.
that prompted me to start this ministry, and I do remember being shocked at her suggestion to start the Fatherhood Challenge and trying to process where this was coming from. Is this wasn't something I would have expected her to say. And so I spent some time thinking about it, just trying to rationalize the comment. And then all of a sudden, everything clicked, and I started to realize that no, this wasn't necessarily her saying this. This was a spiritual calling that was happening, and God was literally speaking through her.
Right,
And this was a direct calling. When that happened, I froze and every hair on my body stood up because I realized that I was in the middle of and in the presence of something really, really big that was way beyond me,
right,
and it terrified me. And the second I realized that, I went right into prayer,
right.
and I was like, I'm talking directly to the leader. I'm not messing around with this, and I
That's
I went
fine.
directly to God with this, and I was very blunt with him. I told him I had no desire to do this. I had no interest in it, and that it frankly terrified me. But I told him, look, but I know who you are. I know what you did for me, and we're starting this friendship, and we're growing this friendship together. And so for those reasons, I am not about to say no to you.
Right,
But I do need a deal. I need something from you, because I don't feel at all like I can do this. I cannot do this. I'm not equipped to do this. I don't know how to do this.
right,
So the deal is this: I'll be your human grunt. I'll do all of the things that you need a human to do,
right,
but in exchange, I need you to open the doors you want open. I need you to close the doors that you don't want me to go through. I need you to run this thing. I need you to be in charge of it. You own this thing. You're running the show,
right.
and I'll be your human grunt and do everything else that you need me to do. I think if we can do this, it'll be fine, and I'll feel a lot better about this, and the rest of it, I'll just walk in faith. And looking back on it, I can tell you now, looking in retrospect, he has definitely kept his end of the deal,
Oh yeah, no,
and I've done my very best to keep up mine. So that's why I smiled and laughed a little bit as you were talking about that deal with God. But
yeah,
once again, more proof, more evidence that we were not meant or designed to do this on our own.
yeah. And I'm laughing while you're talking about it, because my wife, so many times, even right from the beginning, she was the reason I got into this was because of her encouragement, and right from the beginning. And over the years, yeah, she said so many things that had to be directly from God's mouth, because I didn't take offense to them. So if it had been her, I'd probably take offense to them. But yeah, it's like, make a deal with God like that, and you better be ready, because I started getting stuff, he'd throw doors open immediately that I had no desire to walk through, prison ministry and stuff like that. And And yeah, he kept his bargain. And I can remember I would used to, we had a trail by the house we lived on, and I would ride my bike every day at noon down that trail for 7 or 8 miles at lunchtime. And I can remember many times just kind of opening myself out and feeling the breeze of the Holy Spirit come upon me and talk to me and tell me, different things that I should do, or quietly whisper, I should say, things that I needed to do, things I shouldn't do, stuff like that. So it was very empowering to be able to put that onus on God and not have to carry that load around that everything is my responsibility.
Is it possible for a dad to be at his best without spiritual help? And if not, what does it look like to have that spiritual help in every aspect of parenting? How can it ease stress and anxiety?
For me, it wasn't, because I did not have the background of having had a good parent, good father modeled for me. And so I absolutely didn't know. And the other thing is, I used to, when my kids became teenagers, they're always trying to get to do something that they're not supposed to do. They're always trying to go somewhere. And I would just blame God. I'm like, look, I'm responsible to God when I die about the decisions that I let you make in life and stuff like that. And I don't want to get up there having let you done something that I know is wrong and have God reprimand me because I let you do that. And they seem to accept it pretty well, that it wasn't coming from Dad, it was coming from God. And yeah, so that worked out well. I blame God a lot, so no, not really, but anyway.
I think that helps because you were modeling a parental relationship between you and God, and you were modeling that to your teenagers, and you were involving them in that process. And I think that is so powerful.
Well, and that's a good point you bring up. I always involved my kids in the ministry work that we were doing. So if I was doing a workshop or a conference, they would come along, they would help unload everything, they'd help set me up. My daughter would work in the childcare room. My son would be like security or something at the door. And it worked out really well, I think. And my wife, of course, was involved a lot. And I think it brought us together as a family more to be involved in something bigger than us like that. And they were able to see people's lives changed, and it was just a good experience, I think, to involve them and stuff like that. Made a lot of good memories. And so yeah, I think it's important to involve your family in the work that you're doing this for God. Even if it's going to the soup kitchen or going on prayer vigils. I remember doing a lot of things where I took the kids along with us. And
That time that you were spending with your kids, involving them in what you were doing, I like to think of it as a legacy. You were leaving a lasting legacy with your kids that will last for generations.
a better legacy than I could have left on my own, put it that way.
For dads that are concerned about leaving a positive legacy for their children and future generations, what are some actionable steps dads can do now that will leave that lasting positive difference now and for generations if they stay consistent?
I think if you leave memories instead of, I know, most of us want to feel like our main job is working and providing and protecting. And it is. That's a huge part of our job. But, the other aspect of it is you only got your kids for maybe 18, 20 years at best. And it goes fast, let me tell you. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss it all. If you think you got to work, 60, 70 hours a week or whatever, it's going to be tough for you to develop a lasting lifetime relationship with your kids.
I used to work really, really, really long hours, and I eventually left that career, and a part of it was in preparation for doing the fatherhood challenge. But on one of the evenings, my son came up to me and told me that, he didn't want me to know at the time, but when I left the door to go to work, he said that he'd go back in the house and he would cry.
Oh,
And that was really, really a difficult pill to swallow, realizing that my long hours and at work were causing that much of a toll.
they're not
But
creating positive stuff like we think.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a big driver behind the decision to leave the career that I did and go into one where I was home a lot more than I used to be. And now we're making great memories, and it really has seemed like the boys have started to really heal from that time that they were missing me. You just can't get that time back, and so all you can do is make, if you can, make different choices, make different decisions, and you won't regret it.
Right.
I do regret the time I spent away from them. I do not regret my career change,
Right.
and the fact that I've had more time with them now than I ever have. I do not regret that part.
Your wife has to be pretty supportive too. I owned an environmental engineering firm for 16 years before I started doing Better Dads, and it's hard to give that up. That financial security. We had a pretty good lifestyle at that point, and then you go full time ministry. Nobody I know is making a lot of money doing full
Hmm.
time ministry, so it's a huge job, and there's not a lot of women I think that can remain, what's the word, faithful to your vision, I guess. Because I think she clearly knew I had a vision from God, and that I felt like I'd been created, this was the path that I was supposed to walk, was through this ministry work, and I still believe that. But for your wife to step out on faith and always be behind you, even when it's really hard to pay the bills and buy food, you know what I'm saying? That takes a pretty special woman. And one of the reasons that made it easier for my wife and kids to buy into, what dad's crazy vision that God gave him, like Noah or something. Let's build a boat in the backyard kind of thing. But, he was very faithful to, well, first of all, I think he knew that I could not do it if he didn't show me the fruit of my labor on a pretty consistent basis. And so, right from the beginning, we were getting emails and texts and letters from people whose lives had been touched and changed. And, it's pretty nice for your wife to be able to see stuff like that, and know that she contributed to that. And it just encourages her even more to, be a part of it. So God was very faithful throughout the whole run we had of this ministry. So yeah, for me, I couldn't do it without God involved in my life, and I suspect the average man has the same issue. I don't know, I don't know. I know a lot of peers that do the kind of work that we do, and I don't know any of them who don't have a strong faith in God. So, can you do it? Yeah, maybe, but why? why do that when God can do it for you and do it a lot easier and faster than you can?
Whether it's ministry, whether it's some other career, and I'm talking to dads out there now, or whether it's being a parent, being a dad, I can say with certainty, you will not go ahead and try and be at your best, but
Yeah,
you will never be at your best. It's impossible. Not at your ultimate best. You will be as good as you can be without spiritual help. And that might be pretty good,
yeah,
but it is impossible. You will never arrive or be at your absolute best without spiritual help. It is impossible. And the reason why it's so impossible is because you weren't designed to do that.
right, right,
You were designed to remain constantly spiritually connected. So why would you try
yeah,
to accomplish and do something in a way that you weren't designed to do it? I love what you were saying about the partnership with you and your wife, and also loved how you shared those successes with her. And I mean, and really, ultimately, if we're really honest about it, your wins are shared. Your wins are both of your wins. It's her win. It's equally her win too, because she's been in this just as much as you.
exactly. And had even more faith, maybe. I don't know.
What are simple, actionable steps that a dad can do starting now to improve his marriage and also set a good example to his kids?
Well, you asked me earlier how I changed, and I think change is hard, but it's possible. And I think if you can learn about yourself, learn about your background, learn about why you react the way you do to certain things, certain stimuli, Like, just as an example, this is just it's one of 100 different examples. But when I grew up, a loud noise would cause a very negative response in a hungover parent. So we all we're as quiet as we could be in the house and stuff like that. And even to this day, if a loud noise, if somebody comes up and startles me from behind, or whatever, my reaction is I can either react in a fight or flight. And because I'm an adult male now, I react with anger. I react with a fight response instead of a flight response like I did when I was a kid. So, I explain this to the kids, of course, and what do? They spend the next, you know, 15 years trying to sneak up and startle me, see what kind of reaction they get. Poking a bear with a stick kind of a thing. But so yeah, a lot of different things like that. But through finding out who I was and what made me tick and why, I'm able to rebuild those neural connections in my brain by practice, by willpower, by by prayer, by um, thinking about it when I wake up, thinking about it when I go to bed. That I want to change those behaviors. I don't want to react that way. I don't want to be that type of person. And eventually, with enough practice, you're able to rebuild those neural pathways and make the new ones stronger than the old ones. It's not easy, takes a long time, but to my mind, that's the only way to do it. Now, I also discovered that there's a number of things that I had to do in order to try to successfully heal, if you will. Um, and that included education, that included counseling, and that included having a mentor of some sort, even if they didn't know they were a mentor. And let me just say to your listeners that, guys, if you need counseling, there's nothing unmanly about going and getting help. I've done it my whole life. I know men are reluctant, generally, to go to counseling, but it was very helpful for me. So I think the evil one has put in our minds as a culture that it's not manly to go to counseling. Or,
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's a spiritual attack, but we don't look at it that way. We look at it as a cultural thing. And I saw the evil one try to do a lot of stuff to take me out of the game, and he finally succeeded. But uh, it's difficult. It's hard. It's we go into something like you and I did, and we don't really anticipate the spiritual attacks that are going to come, but they're 10 times higher than they were when I was doing nothing. Now I'm changing people's lives for God, and he's not happy, and the evil one's trying to figure out ways to derail me and get me out of the game and stop helping people and changing their lives for the better.
And don't expect it to be any different if you're a father and you're making a difference in your children's life, because Satan, if he does one thing, he works smart, not hard. He
Right.
doesn't have to do all of the side work. All he has to do is knock one generation or knock one dad. If he can knock one dad, he can do lasting damage for multiple generations if you were not aware of it. And once again, if you were not spiritually connected. Another reason why it's dangerous, flat out dangerous to do it on your own.
That's very true. Yeah, I shudder to think of what might have happened if I wasn't connected with God pretty closely at that time.
Now, Rick, you've written several books, but the book that really caught my attention is called Better Dads, Stronger Sons. Why did you write this book, and what can dads learn from reading it?
The Better Dad, Stronger Son is like, straight from my heart. I mean, it talks about the 10 things that dads do that can ruin their legacy. And, conversely to that, I guess there's 10 things you can do that would help your legacy if you look at it from the opposite direction. But I tried to just include in there, the things that I had found to be important and things that I thought would help men. And, all of my books have free leader leader guides for small groups. So a lot of churches and stuff around the country were using some of the different books for for their ministry and stuff like that. So,
Rick, how can dads learn more about what you're doing, connect with you, or purchase your books?
yeah, if they want to go to my website at betterdads.net, that is a good way to find out exactly what I'm doing, what I have done, what what books are on there, and all that kind of stuff.
And also, if you go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com, that's thefatherhoodchallenge.com. If you go to this episode, look right below the episode description and you will see the link right there. Just in case you forgot or can't remember where to find it, you'll find the link there. You can click on it. It'll take you right to Rick's page. So, Rick, as we close, what is your challenge to dads listening now?
Well, the main thing that I would like men to come away from here is that is for them to realize how important they really are. Being a dad and a husband is a pretty thankless job most of the time. It's not like work where we get a pat on the back or get a raise or whatever. And I think men need to realize how important they are because nobody tells them. And I think within a family, they're just as important as a mother. They provide different services, if you will, than a mother does. But, and again, as a father, we need to recognize that our time is not just valuable to us, but it's valuable to our kids. And so if you talk to any kid that comes from a home without a father in it, they don't want presents, they don't want money, they want their dad to be with them. That's important. And there's a lot of stuff in this book that talks about telling men just how important they are. Not only telling them, but explaining to them why they're that important and what all that means. And I think it's very helpful for men to hear that. They need to hear that. Otherwise, it's hard to continue on.
Well, Rick, it's been great having you on the Fatherhood Challenge. Thank you so much for your time and for being with us.
My pleasure, Jonathan. I'll ask me back anytime.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.